Welcome to the Rediscover You in Midlife Pod Summit, hosted by The Roller Coaster. My name is Lucy Q. 5 years ago, the emotional turmoil of midlife turned my life into a shitstorm. To make things worse, I had no idea that my chaotic emotions were due to the roller coaster of midlife. I thought I was crazy, and I felt completely alone. I've come to realize that midlife is more than a list of symptoms that we have to endure or cure. Midlife is the beginning of our next chapters. This is our time to be heard, to live our best lives, and to fix those pesky hormones. Join me as I chat with experts and industry leaders about nutrition, bone health, hormones, mindset, healing, journaling, living life to the fullest, and yes, even sex. I'm inviting you to throw your head back, arms in the air, and come along with me for the ride. I was finally able to start my journaling practice back in 2018, but that was only after several failed attempts. Before I was really able to connect with journaling, I had purchased countless blank journals with high hopes of pouring myself onto their pages. Instead of spilling my words of wisdom and insight, I'd find myself sitting there just staring at blank pages, painfully trying to find something to write. That is why I created Your Journaling Journey, a quick start guide to begin your journaling practice today. Your Journaling Journey is a guided journal with daily prompts, gratitude, and affirmations. You can get your copy of Your Journaling Journey today on Amazon or check out the show notes for links. Welcome back to the Rediscover You in Midlife Pod Summit. I'm your host, Lucy Q, and joining me today is Julianne Bosch. Julianne is a life strategy coach, author, and mother of 3 who has moved 13 times on 4 continents, and yes, ladies, she is here to tell you all about it. Her kids are now educated, employed, and elsewhere. Welcome,
yes,
Julianne.
They are. Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, so
again,
we're gonna start things off a little bit differently for this one, because even getting going today, I think it just speaks to some of what you and I have both been going through over the last few weeks, and that's utter chaos. Before jumping on today, there is a tech issue. Neither one of us could figure it out, and finally we decided to scrap it all and start again, and finally we were able to connect. But Julianne, you're in Florida, and as we're recording this, have you actually recovered somewhat from Hurricane Ian?
me personally, yes, but where family members are down in the Cape Coral and Marco Island area, there's still aftermaths of that hurricane that are amazingly humbled that you see people jumping in to help each other. But the news has moved on, is what I want to say. And it's still crushing. You see things and fires, and what saltwater does after is just shocking. And it reminds me of when I was in Japan. We were also there during the tsunami, and it just, I'm very peaceful right now because I realize you can only control the things you can control, and it's the people that matter.
And a lot of people forget. I'm in Canada. I'm north of Florida in Nova Scotia. And people forget that we get hurricanes too. And typically they're just really, really bad storms. But we were hit with Hurricane Fiona. And for, a province like Nova Scotia, it hit us really hard. We know how to prepare for a hurricane, but we tend to get the leftovers from down south. So they're not nearly as impactful. Hurricane Fiona hit hard. She hit really hard. And my community, we lost power for 4 days. We do have a generator so that you can keep the basics going, but there's still displacement. Everything's different. You're sort of out of that routine. You're you're sort of struggling to live a normal life, but meanwhile there's chaos all around. And you do see the devastation because, sort of more north of us, it annihilated parts of Cape Breton. Mm-hmm. And, these are communities where, people were maybe struggling to begin with. And now it's just, it's really upsetting to see what's going on, but the same thing, the news has moved on.
Yeah. And it's a complete ditto for Florida down here. And then add the aging population. I mean, we have the, late 70s, 80s into the 90s of incredible individuals. However, for you and me, it's easy to go down 9 flights of stairs in the dark. But, my father-in-law, that was a reality, just to charge his phone in his car to let us know he was okay. And a fault, he loves solitaire. So, his battery would go down because that's what he was keeping him busy. And, that was a big thing for the elderly, not just my father-in-law, but a lot of the contacts I have in that area is mobility issues and food and water. And some of them don't have the generators, and then dealing with boats in their front yards and things that, aren't supposed to be there. So, I have kind of just opened my heart to realize I don't know what that person's shoes have been walking in, and just to listen. And if I can help, I will. If I can't, I keep them in my intentions and try to connect them with anybody that I do know that could possibly help them, whether it's in Florida or outside of Florida.
It must be hard because I'm the type of person, when I see somebody hurt, I see somebody sick, I see somebody crying, and I want to rush in and I want to fix it for them. Mm-hmm. I can't imagine what it would be like to be in an environment like that where everyone around you is in need.
I think for me, because this is like the 2.0, when I experienced something like this before, having said what I talked about in Japan, I was going in to assist, whether that's like wiping photographs that were misplaced and hanging photographs so that people could just catch their photos at that time. To this now is just kind of just being there for people. I think that's the only thing that I can do right now, is to hear their story and what they're suffering. And it's overwhelming. And I think that's the only thing that I can do to control the chaos, is kind of get quiet and really listen, because half of it is they just need to be heard.
Yeah. And it's that telling of your story, of what you went through. And I don't even know how to put words to it. It's more validating your experience, I want to say, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
So, like, our topic that we were going to be talking about is how do you manage yourself? And that's why I sort of thought this chaos that we've both seen recently is a perfect example of real life dealing with chaos. And dealing and just managing yourself within that chaos. So, you talked about getting still and sort of understanding what you could and couldn't do. Can we dive in a bit deeper, and what are some of those tools that are now part of who you are in your everyday life? But what are those tools that you really leaned on during this time to keep yourself up and to keep yourself going?
I, as you call it, we both call it this: how do you manage this? And I hold to 3 principles. It's intentionality, accountability, and my safety zone. And your intentionality is made up of the beliefs, your core of what you were taught growing up, what pieces of advice you take on from others, and then honing in on what are your values, what's important to me, those priorities, and that basic needs. Sure, you want to have a fancy car. You want to have a nice watch. You want to provide that ballet school for your child. But is that a value? What are your basic values? So that's the intentionality piece for me. The accountability piece is I have to do it. I have to get myself out there and project the values that need to be projected for me to in order to be fulfilled, in order to say I'm making a difference, I matter right now to those around me and my community. And hopefully it's a ripple effect because I'm accountable and I don't say, oh, well, Johnny or Susie's going to do it. I'm going to do it to the best that I can. And I'm accountable for that. If I say I'm going to do it and I take that on my plate, I'm going to do it. And then the third piece is that safety zone. I come home, outside again is nuts. It's crazy out there. And I come home and it's quiet. I don't need the TV on. I don't need the news telling me what I'm supposed to be doing or a politician telling me what I'm supposed to do. I look at my husband, I talk to my kids, and those are the four faces in my life that are my safety zone and what is important to honor and make sure that they are okay. And I add in there my father-in-law and my mother-in-law because we've recently lost their partners of my parents and my mother-in-law. And I have to take care of the ones above me right now. That is my duty. Again, that goes back kind of on the accountability because they can't manage the tech world. They can't manage how do I get from point A to point B. Like finally, there is still no power. 2 weeks later, my father-in-law got out up north out of it just so that, we didn't have to worry about him and not hear from him for 15 hours. But he connected with a friend that had a 4-wheel drive and got him to an airport, which was chaotic at the airport, and then flew him up north. Was it a sigh of relief? Hell yeah. But he's safe. So that's the safety zone. Those people that you love are what are going to keep you grounded and stable through all that other stuff. And I keep going to the biggest piece is the intentionality. Is this aligned with my values? Am I kind? Am I giving back in my community? Am I leaving it better than I found it? All of those things that you and I talked about the first time we talked in how Mother took her first step on the moon. It's what's my step? What's my impact? And those are the things that kind of keep me calm, how I manage it. And then a little chocolate in there and maybe a little wine add to help out, just to like hit the hump a little. So, and then a dear friend like you, Lucy, posts something where you're going to a ball as a disco head. And that just made me laugh and cry at the same time. And I just like, God love her. I needed that day. So it was just awesome.
Yeah, sometimes you just have to be completely willing to embarrass yourself because you don't know whose life you're going to touch with it that day.
Oh, and I knew that day was a rough day. And there you were, Lucy, on Instagram. And I was like, all right, pull it, be sparkly like her. She's getting out there. And I just loved it. That was you can't understand. And I think you and I have talked about this. I don't know how you came into my life, but girlfriends, I think Oprah said it, like the more you have that set of girlfriends, the longer we're going to live. So you do need your girlfriends to just raise you up.
And it doesn't necessarily have to be, because most of my friends, in fact, I'm going to say all of my friends, don't live in my community. My friends are spread out throughout North America. And my friends, my husband has never met. I'll be talking about, Jill in Colorado or Julianne in Florida. And I'll be like, oh, yeah, I have a friend there. And he's like, how do you have a friend there? I'm like, well, I make friends with pretty much everybody I talk to. And and for me, I think, having your girlfriends is important. But I think there's something that's been missing in a lot of everyday life. And that's those genuine conversations, those authentic conversations where we're talking about real life. Sure, I could have gotten completely overwhelmed and stressed where, things weren't perfect and I couldn't get things going when they were supposed to get going today. But instead, I chose just to share that experience with everybody listening because life is messy. It doesn't make a difference if you have a podcast that's got, I think I'm over 270 episodes now, or you're just starting out. It doesn't make a difference if you're, an executive, an expert, or anything like that. Life is still life. And, especially when you come to midlife, I don't know, it took me a while, but all of a sudden something just changed and I don't really care anymore. If other people are judging me, because, first of all, I'm going to be the hardest critic of myself anyways. I mean, so really, what are you going to say about me that's going to hurt me any more than what I've probably said to myself?
Yeah, and I think maybe the chaos too after in your midlife is you're able to reflect that back of I'm saying kindness out of my mouth to others. Why am I not doing that to myself? And finally we get there and be like, yeah, it's time. Like I'm done with that. Midlife is like, yeah, there's hot flashes, and I don't think our mother's era they wore purple or the women wear purple or whatever. Like bring it. I'll wear
Oh,
purple, wear a
wasn't that the
disco
Red Hat
ball.
Society?
Yeah, something like that. I think um, it's that possibility of being kinder even to ourselves. I think we have stopped that. So communicating, maybe people think you're a little bipolar or whatever, but you are talking to yourself every so often saying, you can do this, you can get there, you can take it one step at a time, you can get some more water bottles and pass them out. You can, whatever that may be. I think in the midlife stage, it's just what is my relevance on this earth, and I don't care if you don't like me. Well, woof, you missed out on somebody amazing in your life. So it's easy to say that now in midlife. I don't think in my 20s and 30s I was capable or confident enough to say it.
Well, no, and it was when you were saying that I'm like, imagine what we would tell our high school selves, because I think that is the time when you do care what
Yeah,
everybody else thinks of you. Your entire existence at some points in time is gauging whether or not people like you.
totally. I like you, Lucy.
And then, it almost gets, I'm going to say somewhat gets worse once you start having kids and you're at the playground. Because
Yeah.
then there's a whole new, it's not about judging you. Then all of a sudden everyone's judging everyone else's kids about who's walking when and who's talking and who can read and who can do this. And
Yeah,
it just,
Tiger Mom comes out because that's 50% of your DNA in there. And you're like,
it's
hey,
like, oh yeah,
hey, wait
don't
a
you talk
second.
that about my kid. And then I don't know if it's just exhaustion or resignation that at midlife you're like, yeah, I'm done. And it's freeing. It's freeing, and I could only wish there was some way that we could reach back to our younger generations and just say, just it's not worth it.
Yeah,
All of this is just not worth it.
yeah. And I think I'll give credit to my great grandmother and my grandmother and my mother. They tried to tell us these things, but we weren't listening. And I feel like if we kind of just keep taking bits and pieces of advice of great women that you kind of admire, hopefully my daughters are listening and watching and realizing it's more than just that, and that they'll get it sooner than we did. That's all you can pray for at this moment is like, wow, maybe they'll get it, when I got it at 50, maybe they'll get it at 47 and a half. Then we beat the system, we change the cycle. And then their daughters will get it at 45.
Well,
I don't know. Maybe that's my quest.
I didn't have. I was our family. We emigrated from England to Canada when I was 2. So I was raised in an environment with no family, no family. And obviously that was way before social media, so I didn't even really know who any of them were. I never had that matriarchal energy or influence in my life. And I have 2 sons. So it's, I'm going to have a daughter-in-law. I mean, she's been with my son for long enough. I kind of consider her that anyways. I'm like, if anything happens, you get to stay. He can go. um, but it's. I lost my train of thought. Menopause.
Well, I think
But
too, I mean, what a difference of the way you look at your daughter-in-law now is like, wow, I have this daughter-in-law. Like there was this kind of era of, oh, this daughter-in-law. Like even the way you just communicated about how much you love her and care about her is the difference. I think we have been blasted with hurricanes and pandemic and um, just knocked in the head and left and right and political systems and global issues and war. And then all of a sudden you come back and you're like, I just want my area. I'm cleaning up my front doorstep, as I told you before.
and that goes back to your comfort zone. That
Yeah.
that the circle of who we surround ourselves with all the time, because you do have to be careful about who you're
Yeah.
letting in, and I'm also referring to your own family,
Mm-hmm.
because in a lot of cases your own family can be the most toxic people that are around you.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily easy to create those distances, but you do have to fiercely protect that safety zone,
Mm-hmm.
because if you don't have that place to be, to retreat to, then you're constantly going to be caught up in, fight or flight. If you're
Yeah.
constantly defending yourself, who you are and what choices you're making, and I'm not referring to if you're being harmful to yourself, but
Yeah.
if you're living your true authentic life, that may not always align with who your family thinks you should be, and
Mm-hmm.
that's okay. You
Yeah.
have to find the courage to hold your own space and create that comfort zone. And if that means limiting your contact or your association with, whether it was friends you've had for years or family members or cousins, aunts, uncles, whatever it is to you, I think it's critical in midlife to really define who you want in your life.
Yeah. And I think midlife allows you to say, yeah, I don't need that anymore. So that's the beauty of it. And then, because of how I met you the first time, the book, women now from all over the world are like pummeling me with advice, which I am just like, okay, what do I do with this? And I keep thinking about that. I was like, gosh, I've been given this like nugget of truth of all these authentic women, and they're giving me their truths. And for example, a grandmother emailed me recently, and she said, "I just loved your book. I'm like giving it to my family members." And she said, "The thing that I found interesting is I am getting older now. I'm old." And I realized like all my friends, my girlfriends that were also went through midlife with me are also passing away. And she said, "So it's my duty now to make friends with people younger than me, because they keep me on my toes and keep me curious, but then also they're going through things, and I'm able to provide an insight, not tell them what to do, but provide an insight." So that is also kind of something that I'm thinking about myself. Do I seek out younger women, or just to kind of like ease their burden a little bit and let them into my circle, because you see the potential of them, what you look like at your 20s and 30s. I don't know, this is a quest, this is a challenge, and this is an inquiry. I don't know if I do it enough, but
But I think that's my purpose right now, is you know it wait go back. I'm not even going to wager how many hundreds or thousands of years ago, but there was a point in time where our communities were very different, and we had the women in the community, and they were all helping, teaching, and relying on one another. But over the course of history, we're now isolated in our own homes, dealing with our own shit on ourselves by ourselves. And that's one of the things that I've recognized, is that there's this massive gap even in how we're perceiving midlife. it's this solitary, lonely experience that you're going through, that you're having to go out there and find the information of, you know, do I go on hormones? Do I not go on hormones? Do I have to worry about my bone health? Do I have to take a calcium? All of this stuff. And, you know, you don't necessarily have somebody to ask, because even if you ask your mother, everything's changed since then. Everything's changed since then. So who do you talk to? You know, at the end of the day, when, you know, all the chaos settles, do you have time? How much time do you have to do all of this research? So I think that's what's driving me to, you know, I built this online community, nectargrowth.com. And for anybody that's part of the Pod Summit, they can join. It's where they're going to have the video recordings. It's where they can have the freebies from everybody. It's all in this community. The main thing that I want to do in this community is at least monthly have an open call where women can get together and just have conversations like we're having today, to authentically say, you know, this is what I'm dealing with. This is my struggle, or what do I do about this, or even the chance to vent. And most of all, the chance to be heard.
Yeah. Or adding to that is also, we kind of put ourselves in these little boxes. And sometimes you're like bouncing off the walls of all this little box. And somebody, when they do see you and they do hear you, they're like, here's some brainstorm thoughts and ideas that I see in your situation. Have you thought of? Tell me more about that. And all of a sudden, like, you have 20 ways to solve that problem just because somebody like cracked your little box a little bit. And then all of a sudden it's like Pandora's, like, you know, wow, it's not so bad. She has bone health issues. She is getting hot flashes. She is, you know, I'm not the only one. I think that community also, it breaks you out of your own box, which is something that I think lately we've been strapped in a lot for some weird reason. I don't know why that is.
Well, yeah, I think that's been happening naturally over the last, call it decade, but most definitely the last 2 years literally put us in the boxes of our own houses with virtually no real contact with people around us. And, you know, some people did really well. A lot of people just turned inwards and, you know, pulled away from having conversations and from connecting. We don't have to be sitting in the Starbucks. We don't have to be sitting around the same table with a glass of wine. But we can most definitely connect and create those bonds and have those conversations that I think so many of us are so desperately lacking.
Yeah. Or even that little picture. You know, sometimes they say that picture that does 1,000 words. I mean, your little picture just changed the mindset, you know, and I think we need to start pushing back a little bit and putting, you know, be vulnerable a little bit and just put yourself out there as a midlifer. Who cares? You know, and I think it's like a badge of honor. It's like, whoo, I finally made it here. I'm going to slide in dusty, dirty, and let's go. This is the second part that's even more enjoyable. And I think that's, you hear this about everyone that kind of makes it towards the end. It's about the people and those experiences and the love they feel around them. It's not about all the other stuff. So I'm on a quest with this midlife. It's like, yeah, I've got hot flashes, but I'm the hot is basically going to fuel me to do better.
I love that. I love that. And I said to my husband, I think it was yesterday, I said, I'm actually excited to turn 50. I'm turning 50 in May. And I'm excited. I don't know why. I'm just excited. I've never been, like, I wasn't really excited to turn 40. It's not that I was depressed. It was just indifference. But now, like you said, now turning 50, this is a badge of honor. I've been on this world. I've been in this world for half a century. It's
and
like
survived. And survived.
Yeah. So
yeah. Well, I've only been in it for a couple of months, but it's the cool kids are over here. That's all
I can't wait
say.
to join. I can't wait to sit at the caf table with the cool kids.
Wow, it's a big table, but
it's a big table, and we're always adding new chairs.
Exactly. But it is definitely something that a year ago I could not have fathomed the journey that this has brought me on, and I encourage women to just kind of open your ears a little bit. These podcasts, especially, just realize that you're not the only one, and you can be vulnerable, and you can say, well, I need a little more information about that because I don't know. I'm not educated in it. And not being educated in something doesn't mean that you're dumb. It just means that you need some help. And I think that's the wonderful part about you offering this podcast to your audience is it's out there. It's, it just takes while you're walking or in the grocery store or in your car. And that's the beautiful part of this platform for us midlifers.
As we wrap up, Julianne, for the listeners that didn't catch our first episode together, can you just review what your book is and share that with our listeners?
Yes, I wrote a book called How a Mother Took Her First Step on the Moon, and I was turning 50, and I wanted to flip it on its back a little because someone dear to my heart was given a finite time on this earth. She was diagnosed with anaplastic thyroid cancer, and my goal was dreading my 50th, as you and I talked about. And she was like, all I can dream about is getting to my next one. And what are you going to do with this time? And so instead of getting gifts, I wrote a book of all the scratch note values that were important to me that I hope that my kids know. And it's their framework, and it's their safety zone measurement. They can change it. They can adapt it. They can morph it. And I thought to myself, I want that for other parents, male or female, that they have a place to write in a book, get a little, midlifer on us. Like we're told, at least I was, don't write in any books, don't put anything. I want you to write in it. I ask you some powerful questions after my short story and piece of advice. Like, what is your belief? What is your value? Like, write it down, because I guarantee you when you're hit with the chaos, like you and I have recently, I'm a steady Eddie because I know myself. I know kind of what is important to me. And that book, I hope it helps one person, but it has been tenfold the ripple effect of what it has given to me is mothers and fathers have reached out to me and given me their pieces of advice. And now I'm like adapting it. It's like, how do I get even better? And so the book was put out there with an intention for my children, but I got a whole bunch of new girlfriends. I got a whole bunch of new people to influence me for better.
Those little ripples are turning into big waves.
Yeah. Yeah. The tsunami.
No more tsunamis. No more tsunamis.
I don't want to be fearful anymore of that.
Yeah.
It's like the earth is reacting, and we got to be ready for all that. And it's scary. Life is scary. I'm sure, like I said, I wrote it in the kind of context of Neil Armstrong taking a first step. Motherhood is scary. There's fears with everything that we're doing. There's fears that we cannot control. And I'm hoping that book and topics like this and being able to have discussions like this just open your ears to, you're not stuck. That box is able to lift the top, and just, you may crawl out of it, you may spring out of it, you may, slither out of it, whatever your adjective is or verb of how you're going to do this, great. But, I encourage you to just be accountable for that and say, I want it. And I'm going to do something to change it if I don't like it.
Those are some very wise words to wrap things up with. Thank you, Julianne, so much for joining me again today. Amidst all of our chaos, it was it was a lot of fun.
Yeah. It was fun. We're riding waves over here.
And for you, our listeners, thank you for joining us. And remember, join us online. The first 30 days are free at nectargrowth.com. That's necturewth.com. And I can't wait to connect with you. Thank you so much. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Roller Coaster Podcast. Want to chat or share your ideas about today's show? Pop me an email at hello@therollercoasterpodcast.com. Don't forget to connect with me on Facebook and Instagram at The Roller Coaster Podcast. Our theme song, Roller Coaster, was performed by The Lucky Setback. Audio editing by the one and only Jeff Quigley of Quigley Creative.
Life is like a roller coaster, baby, baby. I wanna ride, 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 ride. Life is like a roller coaster, baby, baby. I wanna ride, 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 ride. Roller coaster. Ride, ride. Roller coaster.